Ooh.
What's up, Fed Nation? Rich Maliki back for another Fed chat as we move along during the pandemic. And this is episode 14. Big special guest today. Big special guest, Dan Dibeler. I'm going to let him introduce himself and give a little background on who he is, and we'll get this thing going. Dan, go for it.
Sure. I'm Dan Dibeler. I'm president of K&D Factory Service and also president of Pine Tree Food Equipment. I'm sitting in my office here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania with my nice 1960s wood paneling background.
Feels good, though.
My office looks like. I haven't done anything to it, and there's no reason to. It doesn't add revenue.
That's right. That's right. So, we're all going through a lot of the same woes right now, right? I'd love to get your perspective on the COVID-19 pandemic that we're going through. Maybe talk a little bit about, before it happened, did you see things coming to this extent? What you're doing now, and some things of that nature. What do you got going on there for the COVID-19?
So, before middle of March there, like even when they were talking about in China, I was looking at it a little bit more like the SARS. Like we all heard about the SARS impact, but it never really came to the States. It was that issue. So that's what I had in mind. Before the government put a bullet in the head of our economy and bullet in the head of all our companies. And, we've always said our industry is recession proof. That's true. It's not put a bullet in the head and go to zero proof. But before that, both companies were probably operating above industry standards. I'd say I was doing close to double what the average was. We were doing about 23% growth at both companies, putting up about just over 40% gross margins, equated down to about a 17% net margin.
Great.
We were flying. And the industry average is probably about maybe 10 to 12% growth and maybe 8 to 12% net margin. So that put us in a really good position that when this hit, we were a little flush. I wrote the article for Cefesa and for a couple other things about how to handle some cash flow situations.
Yes, I saw that. That's a great article.
So we sat there and we looked, all right, what can we do? We need to hold cash. I don't know what's going to happen. So we immediately put everybody on 60-day terms. Any vendor, like utilities and more mandatory stuff, we were still paying. But pretty much any vendor supplier, we were putting on 60-day terms. Once I talked to and explained, understood, but then it was still late, I'd get notices. But I've been finding as long as I'm giving them my payment schedule, so for example, this week, we paid invoices that would have been due on 4/6 under normal terms. So this week I went through my accounts payable, and we set out checks for everything that would have been due back at 4/6. The week before we did 3/31. The week before we did 3/23. The 3/23 was the first payment we had sent out since the week before March 16th. So the first week of March was the last time we essentially paid vendors, held on to that, built up those cash reserves. And then we did that. And most vendors have been very receptive once the payment schedule is laid out. I think a lot of them aren't receptive to, I'm not going to pay you and I don't know when I'm going to pay you. But when I lay out a payment plan and this is how we go forward, and even one of our large dealers that we do sell a lot of equipment through, we had some unique terms with them because we kind of were like on a net 30, but it was kind of if the customer hasn't paid off the equipment yet with us and we don't have to pay them. And it was a good, friendly relationship. It wasn't, he's harping on them. Of course, they're being squeezed at their other end too. And so they started putting pressure on us. And I was like, look, these payments are going to go out. But what I can do is if I need to order equipment from you today for a customer, I guarantee we're not selling equipment right now unless it's COD before the order even goes in.
Sure.
I can't take on that risk. You buy $12,000 piece of equipment and then the customer doesn't pay you. So we are operating on our equipment sales side as COD. And I told the dealer that, so anything I order, I'll pay for you up front and we'll take care of our old terms on the plan. And they seem to go along with that.
That makes sense.
It allowed us to hoard a lot more cash going into it. And now after, I am one of the lucky ones, both Pine Tree and K&D were funded by the PPP.
Great.
So when that came through, it's awesome. That's why I started making payments 2 weeks ago. I actually got the funding. I've had the funding now for about 2 weeks.
Oh, that's great.
So we did that, but even before the PPP even came out, Courtney and I kind of made the decision that we weren't laying off anybody. We were in a time period where up until March 16th, our biggest problem was finding technicians and employees for us. It was the biggest problem we had. So why would our first reaction be to go, all right, well, now we're cutting everybody. So we that was the game plan model we were working off of.
Yeah.
So we were paying PTO. We had employees that just started with, literally I had a guy in my parts department started the Thursday before Pennsylvania shut down. So he literally started the day before the shutdown was announced.
Yeah.
I paid him over 2 weeks of PTO because he didn't have any PTO. He wasn't tenured long enough to
Right. Yeah.
receive it. So we advanced PTO. Some of our technicians were like, look, because we couldn't answer the questions. There are a lot of questions, and I think our biggest problem as owners and bosses is our employees have a lot of questions, and we don't have answers to that. You know, you're supposed to be the captain of the ship, and you're never supposed to tell somebody, I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
But a lot we didn't. So some guys didn't want to waste their PTO in case they came in a situation where later in the year they wanted it. So a few of them were offering to they're like, we're fine. We'll just take unpaid time off. We don't want to waste our PTO.
Yeah.
Some of them ended up going into a furlough situation voluntarily because they're like, well, I'm taking unpaid time off. I might as well get unemployment.
Sure.
So we allowed that, but we also made the decision we were paying their health insurance. In general, at K&D, we pay about 95% of the employees health insurance, and 95% of the kids, we don't cover any spouse, just employee and children. And at Pine Tree, we cover 100% of employee and children. 2 different plans for the 2 different states. We haven't been able to combine that yet, but so that was going to be continued to pay for. And then as soon as we got the PPP, we're bringing everybody back. We set up a new PTO structure in our payroll system that we're just calling COVID PTO. So if an employee is working, they're getting paid for their hours. If they're not working because we don't have work for them, they're getting paid COVID PTO. Now, if they take off for a birthday or a personal reason or something where we would like them to work, but they want to take that day off, they're still using their personal PTO like they would. And that's kind of how we're going forward with that.
Right.
So that's kind of the way I took it. I hoarded cash. I set the plan in sight. I built some models to see what our revenue to cash flow is, and constant models of what our receivables are. So again, we had a great February and January. So all through March, we were living on those receivables.
Gotcha.
Even into March. So here's a funny thing. In March, Pine Tree was actually up 8% year over year. K&D was down 8%. So that's how well we were doing before it happened, middle of March.
Yeah.
So the March receivables is somewhat now. Now I'm living in the world of my receivables were from the slow time at the end of March. Yeah. So I'm living off about half of that. So the PPP, when it came in for me, actually almost felt like a loss of revenue insurance payment. Like it's giving me 2 months that all my payroll costs are covered. So any receivables I do get, I can use for vendors in normal business senses. Yeah.
So then let me jump in here too real quick. So obviously we're both service companies. You're in Pennsylvania, Maine. Those are your 2 big markets. Now you're still operating, obviously. So how are you finding over the past couple of weeks leading up to now getting into your customers' locations? You know, I know you're servicing just like us. You're in hospitals and schools and restaurants and all these different locations. Are you having a hard time getting in places, or are there restrictions?
Yes and no. It depends on the customer. Most general customers are that some of the healthcare facilities and prisons will have a kiosk check-in where you have to get they have the temperature scanner and that. So it takes a couple minutes, but it's not overall too bad. I kind of find it silly because if somebody's infected, they might not have the fever, but they can still pass the disease. So it's like, I call it the TSA at the airports. It's the illusion of security and not really security, but
Right.
We have that. The biggest problem we have is actually school districts. So in Pennsylvania, school districts is a large portion of our, a large sector of our business. We do a ton of school districts.
Yeah.
And we understood when they first shut down, there was supposed to be a 2-week shutdown, and they basically sanitized everything and didn't want anybody in there until the kids came back.
Yeah.
And so we understood that. But then when they announced that the schools were basically shut down for good until next school year, we started calling them, hey, why don't you let us in and properly shut down your equipment, do the PMs that were supposed to be done. And we're finding so about 80% of the school districts won't let us in.
Yeah.
And that's a tough one to bite, because it's like, it's work we could easily do that we're not affecting anybody because there is essentially nobody there.
Right.
So they're the hardest. Some of the universities have started letting us in. Most of the restaurants, when it first happened, I think there was a immediate emotional response. We don't want anybody in the restaurant. Like, no,
Right.
You can't come in, blah, blah, blah. Once the new normal started becoming, then people realized they're letting us in. You know, granted, we're slow though, because even the customers that are doing it, like we talked to a McDonald's franchisee, he's still down 30% in sales, even though drive-through is open.
Yeah.
And when you go to his stores, the drive-through is packed.
Sure. Oh,
But
yeah.
he still says he's down about 30%, and basically said, I know I have 12 fryers throughout my store. I know at the volume I have, I need 3 to 4 fryers. So if one goes down, I'm not fixing it. It's not till I get to those last ones,
Yeah.
fixing it. So that affects us.
Absolutely.
But it also gives us a future of knowing that as soon as these restaurants come back to full volume, they're going to have 10 fryers in the restaurant that aren't working. They're going to have, 4 clamshells that aren't working. I'm just picking on McDonald's right now, but same thing can be said across all probably chains that are redundant.
Yeah, that's the silver lining and the opportunities that are going to lie ahead, right? This is gonna break, and we're gonna probably be me and you won't be pulling our hair out, but some people will be pulling their hair out. We're gonna be super busy, right?
Yeah. Now's the time that being bald has an advantage, because this is about a week long. I need a cut. Problem is, every time I decide I'm going to have a cut, I get home and Courtney clean the bathroom, and she's like, no. But we're going to be slammed. I was talking to Dennis Detman the other day, because one of the other things we did is we're not reordering stock.
Right.
We're using it off our shelf. We're ordering for jobs we have. I even had one of our first time fixed numbers was way off, and I told the manufacturer, look, we did this for you for years, but I'm not reordering stock, so I don't have that thermostat on my shelf anymore unless I know I need it. But when I was talking to Dennis, I was like, look, in our industry, I think we're better off than few, because it's not going to be, we don't have lost sales. We have delayed sales. We have delayed revenue.
That's great. Great point.
And I think everybody's in the same shoe as me, is they're not ordering that restock. So Partstown is saying they're 50, 60% off sales.
Mm-hmm.
All those orders are going to come back.
Oh yeah.
And all those orders are going to be done. Whereas if you take, I feel bad for, say, somebody that's a server or a bartender. Like, all right, so the government said you have a rent moratorium for 3 months or a mortgage moratorium for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that rent was free. It just means you didn't have to pay for 3 months. So when you start paying it, you're going to owe 3 months of back rent.
Yeah.
When a bartender goes back to work, he's not going to get 3 months worth of tips in one day.
Right.
When we go back to work, we're probably going to get 3 months worth of work in 1 month. So it's those businesses that I really feel for at this time of, not getting into the political argument, but, how's it okay for me to walk into Walmart and buy a TV and my groceries, but I can't go to this guy's store down the street and buy a TV? Or I can buy this off Amazon, but I can't go to my buddy's local store down the street and buy the same item.
Yeah.
Some of these shutdowns, I think, were completely arbitrary, especially in our state. There's a lot of civil uprising right now going on in PA because Wolf doesn't really have a systematic system in place for what he's doing. Everything just seems really subjective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's getting off a little subject. But yeah, there's I think our industry will bounce back very fast, and I think a lot of the sales will go. That's one of the reasons I put out there a few weeks ago that I'm hiring, because right now I want more techs. I want to add techs, and I know there's techs that are out there that are out of work, and I feel sorry for the companies that did that. But at the same time, I want my company in a position that when the hammer does get dropped, we're ready to roll.
Absolutely, and that's looking ahead, and that's being proactive, and talking about looking ahead. I know everyone's kind of got I know the wheels are turning. You're seeing things, and you're trying to figure things out. Opportunities. What maybe from your point of view, what new opportunities are going to maybe come about for service companies like us?
I think expanding our chemical business will be a huge opportunity, because I don't think after this event that's going to go away. Sanitizers and things like that.
Great.
Stuff that's been on the fringe there for a while, like the UV lights and ice machines and UV lights and HVACs. I think that's a huge opportunity for us right now. Because I think the customers are receptive to that.
Oh yeah.
So we have a quote out there with one of the larger chains for the HVAC UV lights. So my refrigeration manager was just out either yesterday or the day before at one of the locations measuring out to find out what the logistics of it are, which components we would need.
Yeah.
What to give them a quote for all 23 of their stores in our territory.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, before it was kind of one of those things, do we really need it, or do we do this? And it was
We'll get to it, back burner. Now, right, it's going to be to the forefront, because this antibacterial and hand washing and sanitizing and all this stuff, we're going to get back to business. We're going to get back to everything. But I think, like you said, that's never going to go away at this point.
No. And I think it'll be bigger, and people will be looking for more opportunity. I think the other thing that's going to happen is a lot of us are going to look at the manufacturers we partner with and really discern who was a good partner at this time, and going forward, make our relationship stronger with those, and look at the people that didn't treat us so well, and make decisions there. I mean, I'd like to call out Wellbuilt right now. I think of all the manufacturers have done a terrific job of keeping in contact, putting things in place to help us get through this time. I think they've gone above and beyond everybody else, so I'd like to give them credit to that.
Yeah, and I think we could shout out Aaron Sprinkle and Wayne Lemke, right? Because they've been definitely sending out emails weekly, for sure.
Yeah, and doing things like, hey, still hold the parts for 90 days, but you don't have to send anything back. Like, if you can't get the invoice in this time period, we understand. Like, just the normal things that it's like the business model changed. So some of our deadlines and times of getting an invoice is getting parts returned. Just opening up on that, and I even had conversations with them. They're looking, if we don't need it at this time, why do we really need it? It's just an additional expense. Why do we really need it going forward out of it?
Yeah.
And there's been other manufacturers that I would say haven't been as friendly. I don't feel like naming names on that side, but
no, yeah, we won't name names, but yeah, I mean, everyone's handling this a little differently, and I've been talking heavily about the way we handle these situations, our words and our actions, and the way we are right now is really going to set the tone, I think, for a lot of companies going forward, and who we want to partner with, who we want to work with, and who wants to partner with us, how we're handling it.
Yeah, and I think it's very telling. I think Warren Buffett had an adage years ago: is you don't make your money in good markets, you make your money by what you buy and do in bad markets.
Yeah.
And right now we're doing a lot of training. Like, a lot of the manufacturers step up to the plate, doing a lot of online training. Cephessa's stepping up with limited resources down there. But one thing they can do is training. In the past 2 weeks, I probably had 10 techs up at Pine Tree get their Cephessa master certifications finished. Each day, Danny's sending me an email with another tech that reads their master. We're getting set up to, we were arguing with Heather the other day, because we're like, hey, can we do more than 5 at a time? Because when techs don't have anything to do, I can bring more techs in and get tested.
Yeah.
So we're doing 5 at a time, probably going to be doing another 10 or 15 over the next 3 weeks here down in KMD to get back on that track. KMD is.
And, I think that's a great point for any service companies watching that's part of Cephessa. That now's a great time to do that. We're a much smaller outfit than you. So we have 14 technicians, and I would say 90% of our guys are already master certified. So the guys that aren't right now, we do have them scheduled to take a test or two and try to get that completed. But now's a great time to start that stuff, the stuff that you couldn't get to.
Yeah, truck inventories is another good thing. How often you actually inventory your truck, so you can go through that. And you
Yeah.
have time to sit down and analyze it too. Whereas before, we'd mark what was there, but how much time do we actually have to sit down and look at, should this part be on a truck or not? Now we have time to actually analyze data and determine, and maybe come up with better stocking lists moving forward of what we're actually using,
Yeah.
we actually need to have on our shelves. I have guys doing maintenance around all my branches, just stuff that, that door had a gap in it. Nobody cared. Now, all right, well, we might as well fix it while we have the time. Yesterday, I had two guys, literally, they were replacing the flooring in our installation trucks, because right near the tailgate, they were getting rotted out. We're like, let's rip it up and
Oh yeah. Look at we're getting time that we used to say we have no time for. Cleaning out the warehouse, cleaning out the office, getting rid of all the stuff you've been holding on to for a decade. That said, we'll get rid of that when we have time. Now's the perfect time, for sure.
Yep. So I mean that's what we've been doing. Honestly, K&D is down about 70% in volume of calls and about 50% in revenue.
Yeah.
Pine Tree's faring a little better. They're about 50% down in calls and about 40% down in forecasted revenue.
Okay.
I attribute the difference to is K&D, we don't have one customer that represents more than 3% of our revenue. Pine Tree, their top 3 customers probably represent 13 to 14% of the revenue. And their top 3 customers, 2 of them are the large grocery store chains up there.
Right.
So that's been giving us a lot of volume just in the grocery stores up there. So it's just those, what we attributed to the difference is the dynamics of the customer base. So
yeah, and you know what? So we're talking about Pine Tree, and so for those of you that don't know, from the service side, we're Dan is, again, as he mentioned, he's president and owner of K&D, and Gary Potvin, who was former president of Sylvester, there he is, double logo. Him and Dan became close over the years, obviously, and there was an opportunity. So, we keep talking about Pine Tree and everything. Why don't you tell everybody, give a little bit of background and insight into how that happened and with the merger of Pine Tree and K&D.
Yeah, so I met Gary probably about a decade ago at Sefesa. We became friends. We started talking about my snowboarding. He skis. He said, well, you should come up to Maine sometime. Like, stay at my house. We'll go to Sunday River, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at him and I was like, don't make an empty invitation, because I'm not one of those guys you offer to come. Like, you offer to put me up to go skiing somewhere, I go.
Yeah.
So that's how it all started. I went up, did that, got to know him better. We became really close over the years. I had always talked to him about what his future plans were. When I bought him, he was 58. And, so he always talked about, well, in a couple of years, I'll probably end up selling to either Partstown or a private equity group, or I might do a employee ESOP, or he's like, we'll do, he's like, yeah, I'm just going to probably walk away, because I knew his daughter didn't have any interest and wasn't involved in the company.
Yeah.
And one year we were down at the Sefesa conference, and Nick Cribb was talking to me about possibly moving a territory or buying the person that was in that territory.
Yeah.
And he was asking me, because I had just recently opened my Altoona branch, what the costs involved in opening the branch were versus this. If I pay a premium for the other company, where's my break-even point? And the more I was talking to him about it, the more I was looking, these guys are buying companies. I should be buying companies.
Yeah.
So got in my head, the first person I was going to call was Gary. And so I got back from that Sefesa board meeting and picked up the phone. I called Gary. And so I got a question for you, Gary. And I was like, and you can tell me to go fuck myself. And I won't mind, but and he was like, well, what are you thinking? I was like, what would you think if whenever you're ready that I buy you, meaning K&D buys Pine Tree? I was like, in the next 4 or 5 years, whenever you're ready, I just wanted to put it in the back of your head as a, to think about it. So whenever you're ready, like, I might be your first call instead of calling Steve Snower. And he surprised me. He was like, well, what would you say instead of 4 or 5 years, 4 or 5 months? Okay. And it was just the right timing. And I was like, well, let me call you back. So I hung up with him. I called my attorney. Attorney's like, sounds like a good deal. We can write it up. It's just normal business as usual. For attorneys, that is. for you're a business attorney. To go off the phone with him, I called my bank, and the bank was like, well, if the numbers work out, we don't see any problem with it. That seems completely reasonable. So I hung up with them. I called Gary back. I was like, okay, we should have a letter of intent to you. We'll start working on it now. So that was in August of 18.
Okay.
And then we had a letter of intent agreed upon by Thanksgiving of 18. And then we closed the deal. It was a little split. We closed the deal on May 15th, which would have been the Wednesday before NRA started that Friday.
Yeah.
But the bank dicked around with it, so officially it didn't get funded until the 6th when we got back. But we signed all the paperwork on the 15th. And then we announced it NRA. So it was a great deal. It was a great deal for Gary. It was a great deal for his employees, because I think he feared kind of sending it off to private equity or somebody that he didn't trust to maybe take care of the employees the way he would.
Yeah.
And so far, it's been a huge success.
Yeah. From the outside looking in, it looks like it. It sounds like it. And yeah, I'm happy for you guys. That's a beautiful thing to keep. Because, like you said, Gary takes great care of his employees. You take great care of your employees. And, you don't want to lose that. You want to keep that going, because this industry is built on doing good by people.
Yeah. And the fact that I got a ski house in Maine now didn't hurt the didn't hurt the issue. So me and the family are actually going to go up there on Sunday. So my scheduled trip up there was next week. So
yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Dan is an avid skier, snowboarder, right?
Yep.
So if anybody wants to ski or snowboard or have any questions about that, you could ask this guy right here. He'll tell you.
So, but yeah, we're going up. The kids are out of school, so they're just go run in the woods, and play fishing in the pond that we have at the house that I bought up there for myself.
Yeah.
And it gets them out of the house for a little bit, so they'll be happy with that. And then I'll go to work.
Yeah. So and obviously the kids have been home. Courtney's been home with the kids. I assume.
Yeah, she's been working from home. She has a normal, like you see all those things on Facebook of she's trying to have conference, especially when it first came out with all the relief packages that were coming out, all the HR. So one of her main responsibilities is our HR.
Yeah.
So she was on conference calls constantly trying to figure out what this regulation means and what this and that. And of course, the kids are fine all day. So she hops on the conference call and then it's, mommy. So her frustration levels are rising, because it's like when she wasn't doing anything, when they were just laying there watching TV or playing around, they're fine. And as soon as she had to actually do some work, she gets pounded. But so she's been home with the kids, just doing her end remotely. I pretty much bring all her work home, and then she does it, and I bring it back in. I'm the only one that comes into the office here from our house.
Yeah.
On a daily basis, which saves my sanity. I don't know if I could sit at home and not do anything.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I'm coming into the office more and more. When it first started, I was working, home, going back and forth, and I stayed home for a little bit. But this week, I've been coming in every single day. I can't stay in the house anymore. I gotta come. There's nobody here but me. But we're staying in touch. Are you finding yourself doing a lot of Zoom chats with everybody, the employees and everything, more than usual, more than ever?
Well, a little bit more. Like we've had our first, like I used to before the Pine Tree merger. I would probably get to each of my branches at least once a quarter, if not once a month. I did that. And Pine Tree happened, and I'm up there a week, plus my NSC duties and my Cephesa duties at the time. It was just tough. So there were actually, and I feel bad to admit it, there were actually a bunch of techs that have been hired probably over last year that I've never met. And, so some of the Zoom chats were actually the first time I actually met them, just because I hadn't been around to get to the branches.
Yeah.
Of course, my general manager has and all that. But yeah, I mean, as far as our the techs go, I mean, they come in and out, and we're in constant contact with them every day, all day. Managers are, we know where they're at. Office staff, everybody's on the clock. So our one girl that bills basically all our non-warranty invoices, we gave her a laptop. Our phone system, you can basically plug in anywhere As long as it's internet, it'll be live. So she has a phone at her house. She's been doing that. And she just runs UFS 2000. So
Yep.
she just runs off the D board. When it's ready to be billed, she just bills it out. Same thing, our warranty administrator and our warranty biller are at home. The only one that comes in every day in our accounting office is our accounts receivable clerk. Because checks are coming in every day, and it's kind of what we deem the most important job right now is making sure the money's coming through the door. So she comes in every day. Then I have 2 accounts payable clerks. One's in charge of all the vendors, like Partstown, Heritage, Middleby, buying parts, anything for inventory. She's the accounts payable.
Yeah.
Then I have another accounts payable clerk. She pays like the water bill, the electric bill, all the other bills. They've been flip-flopping now. So 1 week, one comes in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the other one comes in Tuesday, Thursday. And the next week, the other one comes in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the other one comes in Tuesday, Thursday.
Yeah.
Same with our parts department. Our parts manager releases in every day. And then the 3 other people in the actual parts department are rotating every other day. My 2 run drivers and / warehouse guys, they're now coming in every day. They'll run parts to branches and whatnot and hang out. So we're doing, trying to have some semblance of social distancing in the office. A lot of people speak for them, but most people at our company are quite comfortable, operating. Nobody here is really fearing the virus per se. But we're doing our best to be aware of the issues that could at hand. So far, neither company has had an active case of COVID.
Oh, great.
We had 1 case, and I still think he did, to be honest. They said the test came back negative, but the test was lost for a while and this and that. He called us on a Sunday, said, I have a fever, I'm having a hard time breathing. Called the doctor, they're bringing me in for a test. And so he went in, they said, treat it as a probable case. Do this, and this. Once you're free of all symptoms for 24 hours, you're free to re-enter the public.
Yeah.
So he actually, by that, so that was Sunday. By Friday, he wanted to come back in, and we're like, why don't you just give it till Monday? Like, what's a couple more days?
Yeah, exactly.
So he came back on Monday and didn't get his test back for another till that Friday. So 2 weeks after he took his test.
Yeah.
When we first called, they said they lost it. And when the second called, they said it was negative. But I have a feeling it was actually, my personal opinion is it was positive. But other than that, no cases that we know of.
Good. Good to hear. But I'll say, for technicians, going forward into the post-COVID-19 world, obviously I think we're going to have to be debriefing them on how to handle customers going forward, right? I mean, gloves, masks, I don't know, hazmat suits, face shield. I mean, because we're going to be looking to put like these packages together and having them on vans on a regular basis. What does that look like for you? What do we, service companies, what do we all need to do post-COVID-19 for our technicians in the field?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing because, and I think the biggest problem of this pandemic isn't the actual virus itself. It's the misinformation. It's the way our society today views news. And you have so much contradicting information. Like, first, masks are bad. Masks, if you don't wear them correctly, you don't change them out. Like, you go to hospitals, they don't wear the same mask all day in a normal environment. Like, they'd walk in, put a mask on, see the patient, walk out, that mask goes away. Next patient, they put on a new mask.
Yes.
That's how you use a mask. You're wearing the same mask all day, you're not actually saving anybody, in my opinion. You're cross-contaminating.
Right.
But, we left it up to the techs until, of course, now the mandate from Pennsylvania that we must wear masks. But again, the CDC is still saying improper mask use is probably worse for you than not wearing one. When we first did it, we had all these, we did these for the techs last summer, which are those cooling towels.
Oh yeah, I got those too.
You dip them in water and it's supposed to put it around your neck and keep you cool. So all the techs had those. They're like, look, and this was at the time you couldn't buy masks. Because if you try to buy a mask, they're like, are you a medical facility or they're out of stock?
Yeah.
Take your pick. So we said, if you have a customer that wants you to wear a mask, just tie that around like a bandana and go from there. About a week ago, we did get a stock of masks, so all our techs have masks. Again, I think it's just a matter of how you're treating it, of personal hygiene. Like, you walk into a place, you walk out, wash your hands or use sanitizer.
Yeah.
We're lucky we have a distillery right behind our shop here in Harrisburg. So they started making sanitizer a month ago.
Okay, great.
But nobody could buy sanitizer. I got gallons of basically grain alcohol sanitizer.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
And we sent that around. And, you know, it's basically every time you enter a new environment, you should wash your hands or use sanitizer. That, I think, is a perfect thing to do. The masks, I'm in between, because, again, you have conflicting information of what's better and what's not.
Yeah.
So we're kind of looking at it. If the customer wants us to wear a mask, we'll wear a mask. If the customer doesn't want to, if the tech wants to, he can wear a mask. We're basing it on what the person or the customer feels is in their interest.
Yeah, I think as we move through the new beginning, the new world that we live in, I think it'll be probably discretionary from techs to customers, and I think right out of the gate, it's probably going to stay masks and gloves. But I think as the year slows down, we get into the holidays, I think you'll start to see the old normals coming back little by little. But yeah, I mean, it's just interesting to navigate through these times. You know, I don't think we'll ever have this in our lifetime again, and
Hope not.
you know, hope not. But you know, I was talking with everybody about tragedy and how that always brings us together, and 9/11 stories. And you're over here on the East Coast with me, close to New York. So what's your 9/11 story? Where were you? What were you doing on that day?
I was at Morgan Stanley.
In New York?
No, I was at Morgan Stanley here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Had I started at Morgan Stanley a week earlier, I would have been there that day. So the training class, right before my training class, was actually at the 68th floor of the South Tower that day.
Wow.
They happened to be on smoke, whatever, bio break. So a lot of people weren't actually on the floor, because the plane actually hit the 68th, 69th, and 70th floor of the South Tower. So it hit actually right into the training room at Morgan Stanley there. Wow. So I was just getting ready to go to my training. So I'd already passed all my Series 7, Series 6, 31, LH, all my, you know, all the tests you have to do to sell securities.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to go in 2 more weeks. I was actually supposed to go up to New York for the final training. Once you come back from that, then you're in production and start opening accounts and trading. And so I remember I was sitting there, came in the office, and people were like freaked out, like, "Oh, a plane hit the World Trade Center." And so we all had TVs on our computers at the time, and we're watching this. And at that point, we didn't know, was it a commercial plane? Was it a little puddle jumper that went out of the way? Like, they were still trying to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
And we're all watching it as the second plane hit the South Tower.
Yeah.
And then we realized something was up.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody's watching. So we were in the office. And when the building collapsed, our system shut down. So we were being, everything we had operated out of the South Tower, Morgan Stanley.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we would have been up and ready the next day, because they had redundant systems put in since the 93 bombing off in Jersey City.
Yeah.
But at that time, it went out, and I'm sitting there as a new guy. I'd been there for 3 months, and all I'd done was basically study for tests. I'm like, oh, crap. What does this mean for me?
Right.
Do I have a job tomorrow? Like, shoot.
Yeah.
So the branch manager let everybody go home at that point, and then we reconvened. But yeah, so I was at the office of Morgan Stanley, and when it went down, our whole system went down.
Yeah. And so you started at Morgan Stanley. I was a financial advisor, or?
Yes.
Yeah. So that was early on. I was young Dan, right? Back in 01.
Yep.
And so how did you find your way to K&D? Give everybody a little background on that.
So I am 3rd generation. My great uncle started K&D in 1945. Started as Kraft and Dixon clock repair. Kraft lasted about 9 months till my great uncle decided, hey, I don't want to partner. This isn't working out. So bought out the partner, but the building was they already had the sign done for the building. All the paperwork was in creating the company, so he just left the name. Now, he didn't have any kids, so my mom and her brother, his niece and nephew, ended up coming in and taking over the company. So I grew up in the company. As a little kid running around, I'd come in and my uncle would wheel me around on one of the hand trucks, or I'd go diving in the box of shipping peanuts or this and that. When I was older, I'd come in the summers, I'd do the shipping and receiving and every random job there. Once I was probably about 16, I'd go out on calls. I'd be a laborer. I wouldn't say I was the technical knowledge out there, but I'd be the guy that holding up the platen or the extra guy, doing an install. Then when I went away to college, when I'd come home, I'd do a lot of the accounting work. I'd come in, do some of that. And when I graduated college, it was always my mom and uncle's plan that they were just going to sell the company off and they were ready to retire. I was going to do my own thing. So I had a degree in political science and a minor in economics, and my field was actually public administrative finance was where my concentration was. So when I got out of college, I got recruited I had already accepted a job it's called Harristown Development Corp. It's a company that's set up by the city that's regentrifying some of the old neighborhoods and this and that. So they have the ability to list, to procure, what's it called, bonds, city bonds, to fund their projects. So I came on as a municipal debt analyst for them. Worked there for 3 days. Their office was across the plaza from Morgan Stanley's office. So I was out at the food court the one day, and the Morgan Stanley branch manager, I've seen the last couple of days, you're new, what are you doing? I told him what I was doing, and he's like, yeah, why are you working in public sector? The private sector is where the money's at. Hired me a day later. So I went over to Morgan Stanley. And I did the finance thing for about a decade. Worked from individual investments till I was on a team at Morgan Stanley that did, we managed strictly endowments, foundations, municipal pensions, things like that. Really, really big money. Yeah. We had, so I used to manage Wagner College's endowment fund, which is up there on Staten Island by you. Yep. We managed $96 million of Sloan Kettering's cancer endowment. And 96 million sounds like a lot, but they had like 6.3 billion total under management. we had a little 96 million that we were managing for them. Yeah. Everything's like that. Then we all moved over to AG Edwards when Morgan Stanley started doing some restructuring. We didn't like what they were doing, so as a team, we moved over to AG Edwards, which was then bought out by Wachovia, which was then bought out by Wells Fargo. So then while I was there, in 2007, 2008, the real estate crisis, and that was about the time my mom and uncle wanted to retire. My mom had come to my sister and I and basically said, we're looking to sell the company. If you ever had any interest, speak now or forever hold your peace type of thing. Yeah. So I went to my mom, I was like, it's never been a goal of mine, but it's always been on my radar. It's always been looked at like, hey, it took care of two generations of our family to be pretty well off. Why not a third? It's always been in the back of my head. I've never really gone after it or did anything. Yeah. And after a discussion, she was like, well, we'll still try to sell it and see what happens. And at that time period, had it been a year ago or 2 years ago, they would have had probably 20, 25 suitors to buy it. Back then in 2008, nobody was buying companies. Right. And they had one offer, and it was basically on book value, no multiple, and financed by the company. So meaning that as he earned it out, he would pay them, and they didn't want to take that risk. Yeah. So my mom came back to me and said, what do you think? I was like, let's do it. So that was in September of 2009. So then we had some structure in place. I came in the week after Christmas of 2009. Set up, I bought my uncle out that June. Finished buying him out in June of 2018. My mom retired in July of 2018. I'm still buying her out.
Yeah. Yep.
And and then
I know.
yeah, then so that's when I took over. So I grew up in the business, and
Yeah.
it was just one of those things. But when I came back in, I think one of the big advantages I had was I kind of had an outside look at it, and I was the first one to come in. Why are we doing this? As Bruce Hodge used to say, because we've always done it that way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sitting there looking, why are we doing this? Why are we doing warranty at a loss? Well, because we want the parts. Well, we don't have the parts anymore. Well, we want this. We don't have that anymore. So why are we doing it at a loss? Why are we doing this way? Why are we doing this way? So I kind of had that outside look.
Yeah.
And I think that's what our generation is bringing to this industry. A lot of our fathers and uncles and guys that started the companies, they were plumbers, electricians, they were tradesmen. They were good at their trade.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, they had more business than they could do themselves, so they started hiring on guys. Next thing you know, they're running a company, but running a company is a different skill set
Absolutely.
than fixing an oven. So just because you're a good plumber doesn't mean you can run a good plumbing company.
Absolutely.
And I think that's how some of the service to manufacturers got behind. The manufacturers started getting the bean counters and all that happening faster. And now our generation is coming in to these companies, and now we're making them more efficient and operate like businesses versus,
Yes.
you know, when I had my outside consultant came in, he looked at a bunch of things and he's like, I don't understand how you got so big without fixing this, and this first. And I said, well, when's the last time you've been in a company where one of my top 5 issues isn't finding new customers or marketing or finding new work?
Yep.
Like, well, that's a good point. I was like, we got so big because the work was there. So all this stuff was left behind because we had jobs on the board.
Right.
So it's about the fall of 2017 is when I really started doing that, because before fall of 2017, we were probably doing a 4.5% net margin.
Yeah.
Like, so flipped it after about 6 months of reinvigorating, reinvesting, reimagining the company. We went from making a 4.5% net margin to about a 17% net margin. Went from 6% growth to 23% growth.
Yeah. That's a big jump. Yeah.
So,
That's great. Having that no, that's such a key thing when you have a service business, like you said, generational. You know, when my dad built this too, we're kind of similar in certain ways. You know, and I'm still buying him out. You know, but having that insight to come in and that fresh pair of eyes to say, why are you doing this or why are you doing that? That's why when I brought certain people in here, they had that fresh perspective and look, and have helped me kind of, you know, open my mind and say, okay, you know what, let's try this, let's do this, because, you know, we have to continually adapt, especially right now. Now is major. It's the biggest time we all need to adapt. So, yeah, some great things. And this is kind of the time of the episode where I will wind it down and ask you for Fed Nation, if you can give some last encouraging words for them as we start a new week.
I mean, just keep trudging along. Once the hammer falls and we're free to go, we're going to be slammed. I think we're going to be an industry that is hammered. I don't think we'll be able to keep up. So if you don't have work, have your techs training. If you're settling up, let your techs rest, because they're not going to get much rest come this summer when we're running full bore, and not only running at our normal full bore for the summer, but making up for 2 months of missed calls. Yeah. So it's coming, and the key is to when to adapt to pull that switch.
That's it. Yeah. So stay positive. Really, that's the bottom line. It's a mindset thing, right? Mindset is everything.
Turn the news off. Stop watching news.
Yes.
Stop watching anything on your Facebook feed that's relating to what's going on right now.
Yeah.
You want to catch up with friends, do that. But stop looking at political, stop looking at news, stop looking at this. Talk to your neighbors, and you'll get a better idea of what's going on in the world.
Exactly. I agree. And if nothing else, hey, watch some episodes of these Fed chats and dive into the group and talk about the stuff that we're going through as a community. Dan, I appreciate you taking all this time with me today, and I wish you well.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was. We'll do it again. This is the first of many. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Fed Chat, episode 14 with Dan Dibeler. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful week ahead. Stay well.